Hey nerdy knitters, in this video we're looking at some knitting patterns for asymmetrical triangle shawls. You might have heard these called boomerang shawls or bias triangle shawls. They have lots of different names, but they're all sort of basically the same construction. You start at one tip, you work double increases along one edge and single decreases along the other, and that creates the shape. We're going to look at 10 patterns that use this basic construction. 5 are more basic if you just want something simple for your Netflix and TV knitting. The other 5 patterns take the basic construction and add some other fun elements to make it a little more interesting. All of these patterns are available on Lovecrafts. I've got them all linked down below in the video description box. Before we look at those 10 patterns, I want to show you a swatch, but first let me just say, hey, I'm Tanya here at Nerdy Knitting. I'm a knitwear designer and a certified knitting instructor, and my goal is to help you become a confident, adventurous knitter. And you can be a confident shawl knitter once you know how these shawls are constructed. Here's a simple little swatch of this shape. You can see where it gets the boomerang nickname. You start up here along this little edge with just a few stitches. And along this edge, I worked double increases, and along this edge I worked single decreases. And those double increases create that long neckline right there, and the decreases create one side of the shawl. And when you get to this end, you bind off, and that gives you the other angle of the shawl. Now there's different ways to do this. I've got a whole video all about it, and I'll link that at the end so you can see exactly how these shawls are constructed. Now let's look at those 10 patterns. First up are our 5 basic but beautiful shawls. The first one you might have heard of. It's a really popular technique, the Free or Fade by Andrea Mowry. I know those fading patterns are very, very popular, and they have been for a while. Now fade patterns are popular for a reason, because they use all of those beautiful hand-dyed yarns mixed together to create different sweaters and shawls and other garments. And Andrea Mowry is well known for her fading patterns and techniques like this shawl here. I would call this the perfect TV knitting. It's worked in garter stitch, but you keep changing colors with the fading, and there's also some eyelets and a picot bind off. So this is a good introduction to this shape for this asymmetrical triangle shawl with some fun additional elements. Next on the list is Paris Toujours by Isabel Kramer, who's a well-known designer for her casual, beautiful sweaters, but she also has some great shawl patterns too. This is also worked in garter stitch, but it has some lace mesh. And the pattern also comes in 2 different yarn weights, and there's some instructions for adding and removing sections, so you could customize this one as well. And we're sticking with garter stitch for our next one as well, the Silverleaf by Lisa Haynes. But this one also includes some eyelet rows, so you've got a little bit of interest there. And then along the edge there's a lace panel worked in a background of stockinette. So you still have the easy garter stitch knitting, but with a little more interest added, which the next shawl on our list also continues, the Drachenfels shawl by Melanie Berg. Now, if you like to knit shawls, then you've probably heard of her, because she has books on shawls and lots and lots and lots of shawl patterns. Now, this one's worked in garter stitch as well, but it also has some slip stitch patterns, some stripes, and an I-cord bind off, so there's lots of color in there. I knit one of these myself. It's a nice big cozy shawl. It started up here and increased along the edges and decreased along the other, and you can see all of the slip stitch and the stripes, ending with that I-cord bind off. Now we have one more shawl that falls into this basic category that's also worked in garter stitch, all about that Brioche by Lisa Haynes. This one is garter stitch, of course, but we're introduced to some 2-color brioche as well. So if you've thought about trying brioche, this might be a good project for you. Now, before we look at the next 5 shawls, why don't you leave me a comment down below. Tell me about your favorite boomerang or asymmetrical triangle shawl pattern, or share a tip you have for knitting these types of shawls if you've done them before. And be sure to subscribe if you like to get nerdy with your knitting. Now let's look at the next 5 shawls that I've got here that take this basic shape, the double increases along one edge and the single decreases along the other. They take that shape and they play with it a little more. First on the list is Summer Camp by Laura Ayler. Now this one's still done in garter stitch like the previous ones, but it's a good way to use a variegated yarn or to customize the shape. And it includes a fun knit-on border that creates the scalloped edge. Next on the list is another Andrea Mowry pattern, the Goldfinch pattern. Now this follows the same basic construction, but she's adding short rows in here and lots of different texture. There is color, there's lace, there's stripes, there's garter stitch, and there's short rows for some additional interest. What's really fun about the Goldfinch pattern is you could easily customize it. There's lots of colors going on there. You could use more or less colors than recommended. I had a lot of leftovers from knitting a vest, so I used lots of different colors in the one I knit, and I changed it. I would change the depth of the stripes or do a little bit extra garter stitch. Her basic pattern is perfect just the way it is, but if you want to change it up a little too, it's really easy to customize it. And don't be scared of the short rows in this pattern. They add a lot of interest. These rows right here, there's a section of short rows where one side is a little wider than the other. They're really not hard to work, and she explains them very well, and her patterns are always well written. Next on the list is Slip Knit Love by Lisa Haynes. Like the title suggests, this is a slip stitch and a mosaic color work pattern. There's different sections of color work, and it uses 3 different colors. So if you're looking for something with some more color and a bit of texture, this is a good pattern. Those mosaic designs are really simple to knit. You're only using one color at a time per row and then slipping the other color, so you get the pattern without having to manipulate more than one color at a time. Fourth on the list of interesting shawl shapes is Combinatorics. Now this one also uses garter stitch, but you've got colors going on here. There's stripes and lots of different lace. So that one has some easy TV knitting with a little bit more interest added when you get to those lace panels as well. And last on our list is Ewe Baby by Suzanne Sommer. Now this one really gets interesting. It starts with brioche using the sideways triangle formula, but then it adds more brioche, also some seed stitch, and lots more happening. When you look at it, you can see she uses short rows and different techniques to take the shape and completely change it. So if you like asymmetrical triangle shawls, but you really want to try something a little bit out of the box, Ewe Baby might be a good pattern for you. You'll find all the links for these patterns down in the video description box below, and if you want to learn more about the construction of an asymmetrical triangle shawl, check out this video I've linked right here. And if you like to get nerdy with your knitting, be sure to subscribe.